We will begin our session in just a moment. Good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you are. I'm Rob Grimes, the CEO of the IFBTA, and I'm very proud today to be moderating a webinar by Smooth Commerce, and we'll be talking about the 5 secrets to digital success. As we get started, let me go ahead and introduce our sponsor for this session, Smooth Commerce, and Brian. And then we also have David with Smooth Commerce as well. And I was hoping that you guys, before we get started, might in fact give us just an overview of who Smooth Commerce is.
Happy to. Thanks, Rob. Thanks everyone for joining today, and thanks to our panelists, Manoj and David, for joining. We'll get into some intros in a minute, but the high level on Smooth Commerce is that we are a digital commerce and engagement platform that powers everyone's local. We work with all different types of restaurants and food service operators from medium-sized to large enterprises. We power branded experiences that improve the customer engagement and facilitate the ordering and the commerce. So whether that's through a native mobile app, a web ordering platform, or both, powered by loyalty programs with marketing behind it, all seamlessly integrated using a merchant portal for the marketing team to review and analyze the performance of campaigns and engage with the consumers. Being able, even as some of the things we'll talk about today, segmentation and the power of segmentation, backed by a full operations tech infrastructure that includes our ordering tablet, our operations tablet, and in some cases POS integrations. So that's at a high level what we do at Smooth Commerce. We've been in business since 2013. We work with well over 50 brands across North America, thousands of locations, and we're doing some really, really great work in a lot of different categories. We'll talk about some of that today, but at a high level, that gives you a feel for it. Thanks, Rob.
Great, thank you. And David, did you want to introduce yourself? And then we'll introduce our panelists.
Sure. Maybe before I do that, Brian, do you want to give some background on yourself as coming from a restaurant family?
Sure.
Very good.
Thanks, Dave. So my story, very briefly here, is entrepreneurial background. I have had 4 different businesses that I've started and sold 3 of them. My restaurant family background is, I think, important to Smooth Commerce because our bread and butter is restaurants and food service clients. So come from a restaurant family background. My grandfather started a Toronto-based restaurant chain in 1940. So growing up, I was part of the operations and the marketing and all the ins and outs of a restaurant. So I understand what it takes to have a successful restaurant business, as well as from a digital and a marketing background with my companies. Combining those 2 things together is essentially about me. Thanks.
Great. So David?
Great. Thanks very much, Rob. So I'm Dave Campanella. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Smooth. Also an investor, so very vested in the success of the organization. The last 10 years, I've been a management consultant, and I have a partnership which is on emeritus at the moment with a firm out of Toronto. And then prior to that, I spent a little over 20 years in consumer packaged goods with companies like Campbell Soup, Saputo, and Mars. Worked on very large multinational brands. And I don't come at this from a technology perspective. I do come at it from a perspective of how can you engage, customers or consumers in more meaningful ways.
Great. David?
I'm David Segal. I guess best known as the founder of David's Tea. I left David's Tea in 2016 and moved back to Canada, where I'm from, and started a concept called Mad Radish. Healthy fast food, gourmet fast food, just higher quality fast food in general. We've added 2 brands to our mix, and we have 7 stores total in Toronto and Ottawa.
Great. And Manoj?
Hi everyone, Manoj Jarsa. I am the Chief Marketing and Digital Officer at Northland Properties. And prior to that, I was at WestJet Airlines and Shaw Communications for 10 years prior to that. Northland, just for like a 30-second overview, it's real estate, it's restaurants, hotels, and sports as well. So it's a family-owned company and headquartered in Vancouver. And it's got a variety of different brands, including Salmon and Sutton Hotels, Denny's Canada, Moxie's, Chop Steakhouse, Shark Club, and a couple resorts, Grouse Mountain and Revelstoke Mountain Resort. And for fun, we've got a couple of sports teams, the Dallas Stars and the WHL's Kamloops Blazers. And so we operate in 5 countries, 200 physical properties, and we've got around 13,000 team members. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I think you can see by our different panelists, they actually come from different ends of the industry and also some other industries, which I think could play into some very interesting conversation because we know that the landscape is changing. But before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. So your microphones are going to be muted during this session. You do have the opportunity to do Q&A and to submit your questions. You can go ahead and do that through the Q&A tab, and that will be sent, and then we will be opening it up for Q&A towards the end of this. But hopefully you will enjoy the conversation because, as I said, we do have different people from different aspects, and digital has become such an important area for the restaurant industry. So why don't we just sort of dive right into it? And I know we have some specific subjects that we are going to talk about, but I just wanted to ask a couple of questions before we got started from our panelists and their background introduction. I'm going to start with you, David. You've started a new group, and you used to have a very large company here, and yet you're investing now in the whole digital strategy as you go ahead and you open up your units. And I was just interested, being a smaller operator now, coming from a bigger operator, where you see, the whole digital strategy and what the problem is that you're trying to solve.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think first off, the POS for the longest time was the center of the restaurant infrastructure. And I think that's now completely changed. And I think that's moving more and more increasingly towards digital commerce. And why the problem you're really solving for, I mean, we launched Mad Radish in 2017, and we had a transactional app where you could order and pick up your order right at the front. When you walk in, it was waiting for you with your name on it. Right on day one, because we felt that this is really where the business is going. But really, there are 2 problems I think that digital commerce is going to solve. Restaurants, by and large, they operate blind. They know their customers on an anecdotal level. What digital commerce is going to allow you to do is truly get to know your customers, their buying patterns. When was the last time they bought? What are they buying? And how you can cross-sell, upsell, or get lapsed customers back in your system. How you can encourage them to share your brand with their contacts, and just in general get a sense of the behavior, what marketing campaigns are working and what's not. Too often in restaurants, you see money spent on advertising and marketing without any sense of what the return was, or the long-term return on investment. So I think that's the first problem you're solving for. You're solving for visibility. You're solving to see who your customer is and what their behaviors are, and how you're able to influence those behaviors successfully or unsuccessfully, depending on what you try. I think the second thing you're solving for is the third-party operators, the Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, DoorDash, Grubhub. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's so many of them. They're attractive for the customer. They're easy to order. Orders come to your fingertips, to your door, or they're ready for you and you walk in, you grab them. And the problem is these companies are charging restaurants big fees. We've all felt it. And the even bigger problem that nobody really sees is that they're also getting all the data, your data. And I think that's really, really meaningful. So I think those are really the two problems that you're solving for. You're getting the power back from these third parties, hopefully paying less in fees, and most importantly, getting the data, which allows you to have much more visibility into who your customer is and how they behave and how you're able to influence that.
So, Manoj, you said that you were with WestJet prior to your current position, yet you're operating multi-brands, and obviously the airline industry knows all about their customers and the data and the piece that's there, and they've been in digital for a long time. I'm sort of curious your perspective, the same subject of as far as the problem that you're trying to solve, but also it's got to be multi for you.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting how the issues that David just mentioned in his last point have been happening to hotels and airlines for 20 years now, right? Expedia and Booking.com are the third parties in the restaurant space, basically, and they've been taking a lot of share because we have assets, and in this case, we have restaurants and we have physical locations. In the airline space, they had the planes, right? So it's like the milk at the back of the store, really. And I would equate this to, and our business is a bit different. So I think David is like this modern business, and we've got kind of this old school business, which is trying to modernize. So we got a lot of physical locations. And I think what we're trying to do is we're just trying to get our fair share, right? We know that dine-in continues to be the dominant share of the market. We know that in the last 18 months, online ordering has accelerated like never before, and probably has set up a new benchmark in regards to what it looks like. We know that the third parties are good at giving you volume, and David's absolutely right. We don't get the data, and you basically have lost the relationship with the customer because they bypass you completely. But somewhere in there is your fair share of what you should be able to attract. It might not be 100%, but it's got to be much more than like the 2 or 3% that you guys are getting right now. And understanding that component is very, very critical for us. And I think that once you acquire them, I think there's so many interesting things you can do, from loyalty to remarketing to offers and things like that, promotions, to get them to remain in your ecosystem. And I think online ordering and digital commerce is a component in your overall ecosystem to start understanding way more about your customers than ever before, which I believe today it's very anonymous, like David said, right? You do not know who your customers are, and this digital commerce starts to complete that equation for us.
Great. And Brian, you came from a restaurant family as well, but 2013's been sort of a while back, isn't this? Is your family still in the restaurant business?
We have the brand has new owners. So it was about 20 years ago that Fran's Restaurants is the brand, and it's been around for over 75 years now. So it was about 20 years ago that it was sold to a new restaurant family.
Great. But you saw a need here, which is what had you start up and get us into this space. Yeah, and then you're going end to end as well. Yeah.
So before I actually went to post-secondary school, graduated, started my first business, I actually had, really invested time as a teenager in the family business, trying to help with things like customer acquisition, customer retention, customer satisfaction, all the types of things that we're doing today digitally. I was doing back in, quite frankly, it was the 90s and before the internet. So, doing things like printed coupons and doing handouts outside on the corner on the busy street and things like this. Those may still have relevance to businesses, but to be honest, the main channel for acquiring new customers is through social media. It's through, digital. It's through your own web, your own app. If you look at David and Manoj's backgrounds here and the brands that they represent and have been a part of, understanding the importance of social media, understanding the importance of campaigns in digital is really where it's all at today. And I think, one thing that's really important to note is that the restaurant industry was probably one of the last adopters of digital, if you really want to think about it. Yes, payment, credit cards was digital at one point, and as David Segal mentions here, POS was a staple. It was a technology, but really it wasn't marketing, and it wasn't digital marketing, and I think that's the real game changer in the last 10 years.
Great. So I realize we have two Davids on here. I was thinking about doing Smooth David and Mad David, but I'm not so sure how well that's going to go, even though I just said it out loud. But we're going to go to Smooth David now. So, you know, you had a consulting practice before you got into this, yet you became an investor as well. So you must have seen something. So I thought maybe we would start with really taking a look at the first, the first secret to this, about starting perhaps with the problem, and any good consultant would certainly know how to do that. So maybe you'd like to take the lead on that one.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I really love the fact that you started off by asking David, what was the problem you're trying to solve? Because very often we find that when we first start speaking with restaurateurs and operators, they're not really clear on that. And this space is a little bit different than the space that, say, I grew up in consumer packaged goods, or where much of the restaurant space might be, in that speed does create competitive advantage in digital. And you want to set yourself up to move as quickly and fluidly as you possibly can. So, from the 10 years I was full-time as a management consultant, what I found from those experiences is that if you can get really clear on the problem you're trying to solve, as well as its root causes, then, 9 times out of 10, you're more than 50% of the way through to figuring out what you need digitally. And the nice thing about that is it actually starts in an area that you know really well. So if you were like me when I was leading consumer packaged goods organizations, I didn't understand digital, and quite frankly, it was overwhelming to me and confusing. And if I could buy a TV spot with M&Ms on a regular TV channel that I understood through media purchasing, I would do that all day long because I didn't get the digital side of it. And what I realize now is that the ecosystem has built up around, the traditional marketers in the industry. So it is not as complicated as it once was. There are SaaS companies like ours around that can very quickly get you into market. You don't need to know how to program or how to do a digital transformation project. If there's anybody on the line who's from really significantly large organizations and they're considering going to one of the top 5 management consultants and engaging their digital transformation practice, I'd suggest you pause on that spend of millions of dollars and then go take a look at the ecosystem that has been built up around you, because you may find ways of shortcutting that expenditure and getting into market much quicker. The other thing that I find is really important with starting with the problem first is that it helps you move more quickly from what you understand your current challenges are to what the potential solution might be in digital. And the way you do that step is you start thinking to yourself, what's the experience that I got into this business to provide to my customers? In the physical infrastructure, when they come into my front door and they become customers in my shop, what do I want them to have? How do I want the food to be presented? How do I want the engagement to be? When they leave, what do I want them to be thinking when they go? If you flush through that and put it in a digital context, that will set you up really well to then start engaging organizations like ours to figure out what you need, and it'll help you in determining which organization best fits your particular needs. And then if I was just to add one other point, if you want to then build, real speed and velocity as you get yourself ready to go into market, focus on progress over perfection. I came from decades of spending time wanting something to be perfect before we launched it. When we launched products in consumer packaged goods, it took us 12 to 18, sometimes 24 months to get a product in the market, because we felt we needed to answer every question and have it just right, so we made no mistakes when we launched. And the reality was the vast majority of products that get launched fail within the first year. So all of that upfront work does nothing for you in terms of return on the investment of that time. So if you focus on progress over perfection, you take an iterative approach to getting into market. In the tech space, they call it MVP. Design your minimum viable product that you can get your brand into market with and be ready to pivot and grow with it. And don't worry if you're going to get things wrong. It's not bricks and mortar. It's not like commissioning and building a new physical location where the cost to fix it is going to be astronomical if you've gotten it wrong. You can iterate as time goes by, and you get better and better every time. If you're in the process right now of trying to contract with someone, a SaaS company, to do your digital storefront, if it's taking you longer than 5 weeks, you might be stuck in some of this perseveration that slows you down.
You know, it's interesting that you gave so many good points there, but one word stuck out for me early on, and I'd be curious to what David and Manoj might think about this. But you used the word ecosystem, and ecosystem is one of those words. You know, there is no single technology that sits on its own, and yet the platforms, when you're talking about digital, have to work with each other. I was curious as to, both of you have different perspectives on this, but it is an ecosystem, yet a lot of people tend to look at it in a silo. And as David has just suggested to us, you really have to look at the ecosystem and also figure out, you know, take a step back. And if that's what I heard in it, I didn't know if one of you might want to comment on that.
Manoj, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. In terms of like our ecosystem, what's important to us would be, in our case, the POS is very important, because so in our case, there's actually two customers. The customer, obviously the consumer, and my stakeholder is also the operator. And in that, if I was to implement something, if it's good for the customer, which is great, but really crappy for our operators, then they're not going to help you adopt that solution. Therefore, making the seamlessness and frictionless happen for both sets of parties is actually important to us. So for us, that is important. Analytics is super important to me, both from a marketing communications perspective, knowing that the type of advertising I'm sending towards this medium to drive sales and kind of engagement, that analytics, and then the end analytics from a perspective of how much people are ordering, what are they ordering, where are they ordering from, the performance of our restaurants, things like that, and then the performance of our marketing all the way tied to the actual end sales. So our ecosystem, I would say, is the marketing component, the operational component, and the end analytics and reporting component. Overarching is how are the customers feeling about it through guest feedback, and using that feedback to continuously improve our solution. So it is one component of many to make it work effectively.
Well, I mean, Manoj's business and mine are different in the sense that we're takeout primarily, although we do have some in store. It's not in restaurant. It's not as big as our takeout business, whether that's through delivery, ordering in store to go, or ordering on our app for quick pickup. What Smooth David said earlier about minimum viable product is a good point. I think that Manoj was talking about it being simple, easy to use for the operator, and the operator being able to work with it on a daily basis without frustration, and it being dependable for the customer. Those are hard requirements. So, you know, and Smooth has done a good job with over 1,000 installs of getting the platform to the point where you can count on it. The second part, where I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, is on the customer data. And this is where we're really excited. I think that if you look at what Shopify did for e-commerce, you know, over a 10-year period, and how different it is, and down to, you know, I used to sell running shoes when I was a teenager, and, you know, you didn't really know, you only know what you sold, but you didn't know what you could have sold, and you didn't know what people looked at and didn't necessarily buy. It was a very anecdotal business, and you look at where e-commerce is today. I mean, they know every single click, they're able to optimize. I think you're going to see something very similar in restaurants who have traditionally operated fairly blind in the digital world. I mean, they'll throw out advertising and have some some metrics that correlate, but don't really speak to causation. We're really excited about having this ability to truly understand when we launch a campaign, a product, or take any kind of action. What is the impact with our customers? How do they rate it? I mean, we're going to hopefully have ratings. We're going to, you know, when did they come back? How long was it until they came back? There's just so much. I mean, right down to what products they're looking at and not buying. Yeah, I mean, and I think that we are really at the beginning of what's possible. And the key is picking the right partner, someone you know is really invested in their business and is going to grow in that direction and become the center of commerce. And we felt Smooth as that partner for us.
Okay, so you did a great job there transitioning us to number 2 here in the 5 secrets of success in this. Brian, I want to throw this over to you because you've been on both sides of the fence here, and I think that you probably very clearly realize, and he just said the right partners there, that it's not really about a vendor relationship anymore because everybody is involved in the ecosystem. I thought you might comment on that since you've been on both sides. Now, you know, how somebody should be successfully working with a partner, not a vendor.
Sure. So a couple things. I think it's important to just give some context to the history of digital, if you will, in the space. So really, when we started Smooth Commerce in 2013, there was really only 2 standout known brands that had done an excellent job in digitals. One was Starbucks and the other was Domino's. There's a bunch of implementations of digital, but the ones that really stood out were Starbucks and Domino's. And both of those brands, by the way, have done a tremendous job. There's lots you can read on them online. Both of them were custom, solution type approaches. The reality is that doesn't work for the vast majority, if not almost all other restaurant brands out there. Because
most people cannot afford to develop their own either.
The scale that you have to do an in-house or a contracted custom development project is astronomical. And so, a 100 location chain, a 200 location chain even, really, while they might think that they know some great technology people and you hire the right people, you can do it. The reality is there's so much to this. There's so many intricacies with launching a good digital platform. You've heard David and Manoj talk about this. With Manoj, it's the end user customer and the operators. You've heard David talk about the marketing aspects and the data analytics aspect. Try custom developing that. You'll be doing it for years and you'll be spending tens of millions of dollars, to be honest. So we at Smooth Commerce have actually been on the receiving end of a lot of failed implementations. A lot of brands have come to us and said, we've gone down this path with this vendor, or we've gone down this path with the custom developer, and we're abandoning it because it's not working. They either weren't able to get the integrations, or they weren't able to develop fast enough, or it's costing us too much, or somebody's quit and what have you. So what I would say is in today, for restaurant technology, for digital ordering and customer engagement, there's not that many that actually do both. There are a bunch of white label ordering platforms out there. You can go and you can research them. I'm not going to name names here, but you'll see. There's a lot of names when it comes to digital ordering, but dig down a little bit under the surface and ask yourself, is it going to do the things that David and Manoj are actually saying that they want to do with understanding the customer and being able to act on that data?
But it's about flexibility as well, isn't it? Because there are an awful lot of data sources out there, but it has to be put into a meaningful way that the end user can use. And to your point, there have been other people that provide data, they're collecting data, but they may not make it usable for the operator.
Yeah, and the third-party marketplaces were talked about today already in a couple different ways. I think it's important to know that the third-party marketplaces have done a great job in bringing the industry forward in digital ordering, getting the consumer behavior set and trained, if you will, on being able to order ahead, order for delivery. The reality is that that's an extremely expensive channel, and it doesn't do anything for you from a marketing perspective. So definitely, your own branded app and or website is what we advocate for when we're in discussions with restaurants who are trying to figure it out. You should have it, whether you're 100 location chain, 1,000 location chain, or even a brand that has 5 or 7 locations. A lot of people say, well, what about the app graveyard. Like, you know, nobody's going to have 200 apps on their phone. The reality is that is true. No one's going to have 200 apps on their phone for ordering. However, if the local Thai place or the local salad place or the local chicken place is my favorite, why wouldn't I be engaging with them directly through their own branded solution? So I'm going to have my preferred list, and it's going to include my favorite brands, and you want to be on that list.
Right. And so what you're going to end up doing here is you're going to let them have their cake and eat it too. You know, because they're going to be able to, where they need to integrate with others, they can. But then once it's within the ecosystem, then it's their, it's theirs to use. Now, Manoj, I assume that also your relationship with your vendors are partners. You know, there's probably a difference between the two. But when you're talking about this kind of usable information, you really have to have a partnership.
Yeah, I actually agree with Brian. Obviously, he knows the space better than anybody, but our partnership, especially with Denny's and Smooth, is critical. So there are several vendors and kind of technology companies in this space, and it's getting busy. But you got to look at, like, how much investment are they making into their product roadmap, and what is the team behind supporting that? Because it's not just about implementation. It's around, okay, you got this thing launched, and over the next 12 or 24 months, how are they going to support you as you go forward as well? And I also see, from a technology perspective, larger technology companies are adding solutions like online ordering as an afterthought. Like, okay, we also do this, but it's like one thing out of 20 things that they do. So there's these multiple,
and they're being pieced together.
Yeah, correct. So I think the watch out here is, like, think companies, like, when you're choosing a vendor, I think you also need to understand, is your partner going to look at user experience? Are they going to look at acquisition, not just the commerce portion of it, payment integration, for us, obviously POS integration, and then at the end of it, reporting. And then what kind of workforce and team are they bringing upon the implementation? Like, are they going to help you with merchandising and promotions? Are they going to help you with communication? Are they going to help you with troubleshooting? If they leave you after the implementation and now you got team B and team C, is that actually effective for your implementation, or are you now on your own? So I think that's a good part of your overall solution that you got to think about. And I think what's worked well with, especially with a relationship with Brian, like, he's had impact on downstream influences on other partners. Like, we have partners who do delivery for us, partners who do payments for us, and their relationships with them has actually had a positive impact on our business as well. So yeah, as you can tell, like, the partnership is not just an implementation thing that takes like 5 weeks. It's a 1, 2, 3, 5 year run for us.
Right. And Mad David, I understand, you're really starting out and you're making a big investment here, and, you don't have unlimited funds, you don't have unlimited time, and you really need a close partner, because you're also developing a brand. And so your perspective, I suppose, in working with Smooth Commerce and choosing them as a partner, differentiating from the others, what were the things that you were looking at there?
Well, I think Manoj covered it well. There are a lot of integration points, and Smooth is on top of those, and has done a really good job bringing in the entire ecosystem to be able to operate seamlessly. The other important factor in determining whether it's a vendor or partner is, number one, what does their roadmap, their product development roadmap, does it align with the needs that you have? And number two, how much influence or how open-minded is your partner, your vendor, to adding things that are important to you to their roadmap? And I think in our case, we looked at a lot of different companies. In fact, we're switching from a current company over to Smooth. I think we really felt that Smooth understands the importance of the data. And I think Manoj covered it really well too when he said we want our fair share of the pie. It's not just it's not that you're going to get rid of Uber entirely or Skip entirely. I liken it again. I think the analogy of Amazon and Shopify is a great analogy. Amazon is still a monstrous player, but Shopify has emerged as arming the rebels and giving the power back to the e-commerce store, or in this case, the restaurant, what Smooth is doing for the restaurant. allowing them to have access to the data. What we find is that our best customers, our power users, or whatever you want to call them, they're the ones who are going to be much more likely to download your app or order from you direct online. And you're going to get a lot of directionally important data. And I think we're viewing all of our marketing efforts as getting people onto our platform. It's really important to get them on. The more we can get them on our platform, the better we can service them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you also have said it very well that, there are a lot of places to get data, but it's a real question of having the right partner who knows how you're going to use it, is going to be flexible. I believe you said also is going to listen to what you're doing in order to make it something that will help you to operate better. And that's not going to happen with people that are just not focused on a certain industry segment. Dave, I want to just switch over to sort of a third item of success, really talking about prioritizing the customer engagement alongside of digital commerce. I mean, we're hearing an awful lot of digital out here, and how do you prioritize the customer's need, when there's such a big universe of data and things available that they can't possibly use it all, and it's a real trick.
Yeah, the reason why we talk about this a lot is because it's a really important consideration. There's an awesome movie back from the early 90s called Fields of Dream, and in that, the main character hearing a voice whispering in his ear, "If you build it, they will come." The reality is, in the digital environment, there's so much stimuli out there. You can't just throw up a digital ordering platform and hope that it'll work. You've really got to think through, in my mind, if I put my marketer's hat on, in my mind, you need to think engagement first and then the commerce second, because the ordering and the digital part of it, the digital e-commerce, is all an outcome of how you engage with people. And you want to be thinking about engaging with them before they arrive, engaging with them through the ordering process, and engaging with them after the ordering process. And the reason why you do that is because Brian had mentioned that no one wants to end up being in the app graveyard of 200 apps on a phone. So the way typically our brains are organized, regardless of what categories we engage in, most of our brains can only handle about 5 things. So what ends up happening from a marketing perspective is we end up with these brand repertoires. So even when I was working at Mars and we had mega brands like M&M's, the reality was there were about 5 or 6 different brands that met the consumer's needs at any given point. And so the key was to make sure that we stood out. So when they were hungry and wanted a snack, they thought of M&M's before they thought of our nearest competitor. And it's very similar in this environment as well. If you focus on how you engage, and if you do good, the great thing is about these digital tools is they allow you to actually do something that's been talked about for years but difficult to get at, which is this idea of mass personalization. David and Manoj have sort of talked about the amount of data that's available and how you use that data, but what you want to be able to do and what these tools allow you to do is segment your customers based on their past behavior, and then have directed messaging, directed offers, directed feeds that trigger them. I personally am a vegetarian, so I don't want to see a message that has a meat lover's pizza on it. You're not going to get me to purchase anything. But the great thing is on these platforms is me and I know you. And so I don't get those kind of offers, which means it increases the likelihood that I'm going to go back or that I'm going to enter the first time. David was really clear when he said, like, their priority number 1 is to get adoption onto their app. And that is, like, full stop what you need to do. And so, this idea of prioritizing customer engagement along with digital commerce, really what's at the heart of it is think through and be prepared to be, 1, willing to invest in the marketing that you'll need to do to get your own brand known and break through repertoires with your consumers so that you're on their phone and you come to mind when they're hungry. And then the second part of it is, think about the marketing mix going all the way down into your locations. So your frontline people are as important for ambassadorship of getting adoption onto your digital app as any kind of social media advertising, maybe even better because it's a dynamic engagement there. So just don't forget that. Don't leave your people out of that equation when you're balancing that need to have customer engagement to drive your digital commerce.
So Manoj, you have digital in your title. So I'm sorry to put you on the spot on this one as well, but I thought you may have a perspective as well, how to prioritize and manage all of the digital content and digital commerce that there is here.
Yeah, I was going to actually take this spin and try to talk about customer engagement starting from kind of internal out, because if you don't have a guest obsession mantra, then whatever you do doesn't make a difference in regards to how your guests or customers will interact with you. So starting from inside, a few things that we've done specifically. So we've actually prioritized everything in regards to guest engagement, guest feedback, guest reviews as the highest priority, because we know that's how customers shop, really, right? Mm-hmm. So we've actually done it so that we have a real-time engine looking at all the various feedback systems out there. We ask our operators to respond in less than 24 and 12 hours, and if they don't, that has an impact to their overall bonus structure. If they achieve specific benchmarks in regards to improving customer engagement and customer reviews, their bonuses increase. And I think one of the things, in order for us to prioritize customer experience, like Smooth Dave was saying, in regards to like if a brand is important to you, internally you have to prioritize something that's as important as anything else. So we've prioritized takeout delivery as one of our key priorities, and we've established a governance committee, which is our operators, and a steering committee, which is our executives, to put a lot of focus on guest feedback, guest engagement, and the priorities of driving this part of the business really effectively. And why I'm saying this is, if you don't do that, how do you expect to make a serious charge in this area and improve guest experience, invest in technologies integrations, because you haven't built the culture appropriately to do that? So we built in all these ecosystems, and I think one of the key things, one more thing that we've implemented is actually a P&L strategy. So we know our cost of doing business on the third parties and the cost of doing business across our own channels, and therefore we know what margins we have to play with in regards to driving customer engagement, awareness, and driving acquisition as well. These are all kind of critical things you have to set up in order for them to do business at the end from an end consumer perspective as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Before we transition, because you just gave us a transition, I want to remind people that if you have a Q&A, please go ahead and submit it. And also there are materials that are in the chat that you can go ahead and find some of the resources and things in your control panel as well. But you did just give us a shift. So first of all, you have reminded everybody that there is no one single department, not an IT or a marketing department that's involved, that the digital strategy and everybody is connected one way or the other. And your committees, I think, were a very good example of bringing together the different groups and how important it is to really have all of them working together and in on that conversation, because, again, it's an ecosystem, as Smooth Dave had said there. So, but Brian, you know as well as anybody that there's no engagement unless you've acquired the customer in the first place. And so I thought maybe you might talk about how we should be leveraging this, because never before have restaurants had the opportunity to directly engage, with customers as early as they do now. And the online ordering and the e-commerce that's all happened over the last 18 months have given us an opportunity. So perhaps you can talk about how we leverage digital to acquire the customers.
Sure. And Rob, I'll marry that to the last comment you made about, essentially, this is not just a single department approach, right? Because I think that's an incredibly important point. Starbucks, I mentioned the Starbucks app being an early, first mover in digital. That was actually championed by Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks back at that time. And as time progressed and he became chief digital officer, that continued. At the end of the day, I think what's important for restaurants that are here, that are watching today, to really take away is that this is something that is a core strategy that you invest in, not just an add-on that you kind of dump into a department. This is something that you invest in across your entire organization. And that is important to your comment about customer acquisition. So, as we're thinking about acquiring customers, there's lots of ways to do it. You're going to have physical locations that people are going to be walking down the street. They're going to walk in and they're going to try your food for the first time. that's where that frontline support, Smooth, Dave, and Manoj both talked about, making sure that the operators are able to talk to the program, right? If you haven't trained your staff that are serving the customer, in person, in how to talk to your program and how to be excited about it, what are the benefits of it? Why should I be downloading your app or ordering from you in the future through the web? And being able to sell those benefits, to understand those benefits and sell them, then you're missing a huge opportunity. So that's kind of like the more traditional in-person interactions that you really train your staff to be singing from the same songbook. And then, relative to the digital world, the digital tools and digital marketing tools are extremely powerful. You can actually target down to a zip code or a postal code. You can target your marketing advertising. So you can actually say, for this area of the city or of the country, we want to be doing marketing. We want to be targeting our locations, and we want to be promoting. And so I think that's really key. Think about the third-party marketplaces that are doing that. They're experts in marketing. They're spending tons of money in marketing, and they're actually acquiring your customers every time that they're taking one of your orders from you. So it's a competitive landscape for you as a brand, because you're working against the third-party marketplaces to acquire that relationship.
Mm-hmm. I would, before I ask Mad Dave to go ahead and respond to that, I would just give you one piece of commentary. It is not beyond me to notice that Starbucks is a good example, but you guys have Tim Hortons, and I guess you have David's Tea. So we need to be sensitive to those particular things. But I will tell you that it's not always done right. While we do recognize that people like Starbucks or Panera, perhaps, were early leaders in this, the pizza guys all were, they didn't necessarily think about how it all flowed through. And when they increased the orders in the digital and they increased the customers, they still have the same expectation, the same space. They were going to deliver the food on time with the drinks on time. And that creates some challenges.
Rob, you're 100% right. I think it's interesting, though, you bring up a good point. Tim Hortons, they had an incredibly innovative campaign with the Roll Up the Rim campaign, which was really like what, that and the Double Double people knew them for. But they didn't have that digitized until last year. So they didn't have any real proper digitization of their gaming or their gamification until last year. And McDonald's, as big of a brand as they are, has only just now launched a loyalty program.
Yeah, and just to comment on David's Tea, this was an absolutely enormous miss for David's Tea. Monstrous. I left the company in 2016. We had an incredibly engaged fan base, and to not be able to get them on our platform and be able to get a better sense of who they are and what they want and what we're doing that's working with them and what we're doing that's not working with them was, I think, one of the biggest mistakes the company made.
Well, now, wait a minute. So since you're a little bit mad about that, David, let's take this further, because you obviously are passionate in that particular response. And so you missed it then, okay, or they missed it, okay, but you're betting the farm on it right now because you're growing the brand right now and you have made a selection, right?
I look, at the end of the day, the reason to go digital, aside from is to reduce friction, is for the customer themselves. So you think about an offer, right? I still get them in my mailbox. I get the pizza company or whoever sending me these coupon books, which go straight into the garbage, as they do for most of us. You get a very low conversion rate on it. And think about what I have to do as a customer. I have to cut out the coupon. I got to pick up the phone and call them or for delivery, or I got to walk into a store while some person at the cash fumbles around with it, isn't quite sure because maybe the communication with the central office isn't exactly there. There's all kinds, it's wrought with friction for the customer. Even ordering, I walk in, there's a big lineup. I left my house or my office or wherever I'm coming from. I don't want to wait in that lineup. Tell me when my order's ready, right? We built our entire stores around the digital experience for the customer. When you walk in, we have a beautiful shelving setup where all of our orders go with your name on it. So as a customer, you walk in the door, you don't need to talk to anybody. It's you grab it, your name's on it, you go. There's an offer that's available for you. You don't need to negotiate with any of our any people at the cash. It's right there waiting for you in your digital app. So this entire experience is meant to make it easier and better for the customer. That doesn't mean the experience in the restaurant isn't critical. It's absolutely critical. But let's focus on building relationships in the restaurant and take the transactional piece of restaurant commerce out of the human. That's not where we want the human touch. That's where I think an app and website and digital commerce in general is much more effective.
So I believe I've lost my picture, but I am still here. It's the downside of being in a convention center. But I do think that you're showing how that is. That really does bring us to the last piece about control. There we go. And bringing us back around, and then we'll have time for one or two questions here. And I thought, Dave, I would put it back to you about taking digital control back, because there are just too many sides to this whole thing, and there are too many parts and pieces. And I thought you might have a perspective on that.
Yeah, sure. So we've as you can see, that this last part of it, we've been kind of talking around the fringes of it since the very beginning. And there's two areas where digital can be used, where you can take back control. The first is, and this is the most common mistake that we see, is we see somebody who's got a great online presence, as an example. They have a website that may talk to their restaurants and the menus and why the owners founded the restaurants and all of that. And then right when you've got your customer hooked and they want to order, up in the top right hand corner, you'll see order now buttons, but they'll actually be like an Uber Eats button, or you might have a Grubhub button or any of the other third-party marketplaces. And so you're sending your consumer over to the marketplace. And the challenge with that is, one, you're now going to pay hefty fees or commissions for a customer that you brought the marketplace, as opposed to the marketplace bringing you. And as soon as that customer gets onto the marketplace, they may not order from you. They may pivot and go to another brand that they see while they're there, and you could lose it altogether. So the point about having your own branded presence, and I think that's what David and Manoj have really been speaking to, is that then outside of the physical four walls that you've got in your restaurants, you now have the ability to control the engagement and to keep connected with your customers. That's probably the first part, so that you keep the experience going and you own the experience. And then the other part of it, which we have talked a lot about already, is the data. And if the transaction is taking place on your platform, you own the data, which allows you to then spend time looking at the dashboards, seeing what worked, what didn't work, refining your engagement, building your own segments so that you can appropriately reach out to your various customers and their particular needs and bring them back in, and then continue that process. So that to us is probably one of the secret sauces behind getting your own platform, your own branded presence set up digitally, is being able to get that, taking back the digital control of your customer engagement, and then getting the data so that you can improve on that engagement time and time and time again.
Right. So I'm going to guess, Manoj, that you've been through this one before, because I do remember when the airlines had control, and then you had these websites that didn't really care what airline you were on, and then you're losing control, and then you have all these third parties that are participating, and now you have COVID, that comes about, that gives you a lot of digital opportunities to connect directly with your guest. And I figure you probably have a perspective of taking control back that probably goes back in your experience as well.
Sure do. Like, we were able to get WestJet's share of direct to 42% of all revenue. And that's a pretty monstrous size share, knowing the type of marketing dollars Expedia and Booking.com are throwing at it. But it was done with a variety of different pieces. It was done with an amazing digital experience. It was done with a branded app, which was important, and it was done with loyalty, which is WestJet Rewards at that time, and it still exists as well, right? So all those components working together. And and I think this translates over to the restaurant, food and beverage space, is if you're going to order, the best experience and the best price is always going to be direct. I think this just has to be table stakes as you kind of go forward. And it's funny how you said digital is my title. If digital isn't in everyone's title, then you're done, I think, right? So digital is like breathing. You might as well have like chief breathing officer in my title, right? Because that's what digital is at this point to everybody. When you look at the touch points guests use or customers use, right? They're using Google, Facebook, or whatever to get to your branded experience. I think the biggest thing that businesses can do is start to build up your own database. If you aren't driving a massive email database or driving SMS phone numbers or even your social channels, that becomes a losing game for you, because then all that information actually sits with the third parties. Otherwise, you're actually paying media dollars for the second and third and fourth acquisition. Therefore, building up your database is a critical aspect of improving that. I mentioned this before, understanding your fully loaded costs. So if you know that there's a 10-point difference between yourself direct versus third parties, use that 10 points to get them to purchase with you, because you know that second, third, fourth visit is not going to be at that same price. And therefore, the lifetime value of that customer is actually much cheaper versus just the initial cost of it as well. Those are some points from my perspective, Rob.
Well, that is about lifetime value. Brian, I just wanted to sort of go over to you because we did get a question from the audience. And I think that, and by the way, you're very right, digital is in everybody's piece, but I wouldn't want to lose fact that our operations because of COVID are changing too. And we have digital virtual only operations as an expansion as well, which is going to make this play even more so. Brian, one of the audience asked, how do you brainstorm proper questions to get the right kind of feedback that's usable for a business? And of course, that was just brought up as well, that you have to own the data, but how do you get out there? And seems to me you must be doing a lot of brainstorming, because if you're really a partner, not a vendor, you're trying to put this together for them.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I think the key thing here is you got to be asking the right questions, or you got to learn how to ask the right questions. We, in our process with the brands that we work with, invest a lot of time in understanding their business and asking them, who are your customers? Who have your customers traditionally been? And is that really the customer that you will have or that you want to have in the long run? And what are your customers saying to you that you already know? So Manoj talked about this a little bit today. They're actually surveying customers. They're asking customers, about the service. They're asking customers about, who they are. Well, that's really important, I think, to start answering the questions. If you're not talking to your customers, then you're doing something wrong already, right? So to understand the problem statements, you really want to talk to the people who are your customers, and I would think that's really a key and fundamental aspect of this. The other thing that's really important, and David Segal, I think you can attest to this, because when we met you, you were talking with a lot of different operators, and that's how you found us, is you actually found us through one of our other clients that we serve in the pizza space. So you were doing your research, and I think that's something that we don't see enough really smart brand leaders doing, is talking and asking, what's out there, what's working, what's not working for others.
Rob, can I build on Brian's response?
Sure.
Because there's one thing about, if the question is about what types of questions should we be asking our consumers so that we can understand them better and serve them better, to me, that's only part of the equation. So if you think about knowing your consumer, there's pre and post purchase behavior. So in the pre, you can get at that with focus groups. Like, you don't need to have a digital presence to be able to engage a group of your customers and ask them about their experience and their desired experience. But what we do know about that type of market research is there's a huge drop off between what people say they will do and what they actually do. And I'm talking to the magnitude of 10-to-1 sort of a drop off. So it's hard. You'll get directional insight, but you won't get something that you're going to bank on. The great thing is about the digital realm is you get post-purchase data. That's validated data. It doesn't matter what somebody's told you they're going to do. You're now looking at what they actually did, and you can drive correlations back to why they did that, and then start to market and enhance your platform from there. So I would argue that's the really important data that you can get off of a digital platform. And I would still encourage people to do the pre-purchase market research if you've got the druthers to do it. But we're really talking about that post-purchase data.
Great. Well, listen, we're at the end of our time, and I just wanted to wrap up with just a couple of comments and on this. So first of all, I would tell you that one of the last comments was made by Brian had to do with pizza space and how David had found you. And anybody who can tackle pizza can tackle anything because there's so many nuances. So I think that that's an important thing as you're looking at different systems out there. But, being a little bit of the moderator here and a school teacher, we have really covered a number of different areas. I just want to remind you that you really have to define and start with the problem, and define it holistically, the ecosystem. It is about finding a partner, not a vendor. There's too much information out there. If we're going to make it usable, you have to do that. We have to prioritize how we're doing the engagement and digital commerce. And that also takes getting all of your different teams and your different departments involved. And in all of this, you have to ask the right questions to get the customer in the door in the first place. And then you're going to engage. And Smooth, David, that comment that you made that it's before, during, and after, I think very important. And Mad Dave, the comment, about, how do you really connect and not losing that opportunity was there. And then really Manoj brought it home for us also about, getting control and taking it back. And I want to thank all of you for contributing to those pieces. So what I'd like to do is just sort of end this, asking our two operators here. Well, Brian, I know you're an operator too, out there, but asking our operators, is there a final thought or one thought that you do want to leave our audience with as they take a look at their digital journey here? And David, Mad David, maybe you want to just comment on that, and then Manoj will give you the closing comment.
Well, I think Smooth David really earned his name with a great comment before that. It's not about what the customer says so much as is what they do. We've run into this problem so many times in both companies I've been involved with. You get too many anecdotes, too many one-off stories that you use to generalize. I think what Smooth Commerce is doing and what it allows you to do is get the facts, get the actual data, see what the customer is doing. It's going to lead to a much more rich experience for the customer and a much more effective operation for you, the restaurateur.
Right.
And I actually think, you described it, Rob, as a bet. I'm betting on digital. I don't even see it that way. I think Manoj had it right. Like, it's not about if digital's not in your, it's like breathing now. Like, if you're not looking at this, I think you're not going to go very far. If you haven't started on a digital strategy and finding a great digital partner, you're already late.
Great. And Manoj, you get the closing comment there, the final thought you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, I think digital is about momentum and digital is about a commitment. Momentum are these kind of steps that you have to make, but if the commitment is a long-term opportunity, it's not like you're just going to light something up and expect it to work effectively for you. It's a commitment of technology, marketing, operations working together to seamlessly work and really capturing guest feedback to continuously tweak your experiences. And therefore, it's steps in order to get to that journey as well.
Great. Well, thank you. So listen, I want to wrap us up and say thank you to our panelists and especially to Brian and David and Smooth Commerce for putting this on. You can see where to contact them online. And again, there are materials that were in the chat that you can go ahead and get as well. But I think you can agree that we've had a great panel here, a lot of different perspectives, but it is about the digital. If we ever had an opportunity in this industry, it is right now. And we can take all that's available to us and really make it move forward to have smooth operations in the future. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and especially our panelists for participating as well. And feel free to get in touch after with continuing questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks very much.